Sadhu is a spiritual term for one who does spiritual practice to reach God and shares spiritual teachings to communities. And so I would be considered as like an American sadhu. I had these thoughts of like, who's interested in spirituality? Everyone is after worldly things. Who's interested in finding their soul? I'm more interested in sharing an energy or a transmission that people can feel underneath the words. And that's where the real spiritual message is. Even if a person can't feel spiritual energy, maybe they haven't gotten to that point where they're ready to or ripe enough to feel spiritual presence. The seeds are planted in them so that at some point they will bloom into a beautiful flower and the person will start to feel something profound. And I feel like the greatest service one can do for a society in crisis is
Welcome to the Sleeping Lotus podcast, the sacred space where we explore the human spirit's true potential and awaken to our soul remembrance one petal at a time. Whether you're wide awake, half asleep, or somewhere in between, this is a circle where nothing is too mystical, too messy, or too much. Each week, we'll gather around the stories that shaped us, the breakdowns and the breakthroughs that opened us up to divine moments that helped us remember who we really are. We'll be joined by guests who've lived through the darkness and found the sacred woven within it. This isn't just a podcast. It's a remembering, a return, a place to rest and awaken. So pour some tea, light a candle, or just breathe with us. Let the lotus within you open in its own time, in its own way. So thank you for tuning in, and let's begin. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sleeping Lotus podcast. I'm Laura Jean.
And I'm Stephanie.
And we're your hosts. Today, our guest has spent the last 14 years as a monk, describes himself as a wandering sadhu. And before we get more into his story, I'm going to introduce Brian, and he's going to introduce a mantra to set the tone of the interview. So first, I want to welcome you, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Great, Laura. Nice to see you, Stephanie, both. And yes, I would love to begin with a simple mantra, a Sanskrit mantra. Sanskrit is an ancient language from India. They consider it as the language of the gods. So this is an invocation of love and bliss. And we'll set the intention that anyone who tunes in to this podcast will be able to actually feel and tune in to the presence of the mantra. The words are Purnam, Brahmam, Anandam. Purnam means wholeness. Brahmam means love. Anandam means bliss. So I'll sing it, and then people who are listening or will listen to this podcast can also sing along with me and maybe learn it. And then maybe we'll even include like a spelling of it later on so people can use it for their own practice to connect to the energy.
Okay. Sure, we can put that in the description below for everyone.
Great. And you both can certainly chant with me as you want, if that's not going to mess up the sound. So it goes like that. We'll begin with 3 ohms. Om. 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 Purnam Premam Anandam. Purnam Premam Anandam. Purnam Premam Anandam. Purnam Premam Anandam. Purnam Premam Anandam.
Beautiful. Now, is that one of your favorites?
It must be one of my favorites.
It feels good. I can feel it in my chest. It feels really good.
Beautiful words.
Yeah.
Now, I think that when we talked last time that we talked, you also mentioned that you play a harmonium.
Unfortunately, we couldn't bring it here to this
Right.
podcast because the sound doesn't come through very well, but I
Right.
usually sing and play the harmonium together, and that's kind of the primary highlight of the gatherings that I hold. Usually a gathering, or I call it a satsang.
Mhm.
It's an hour and a half, and maybe like a third of it is chanting these mantras and singing together and attuning to the spiritual energy behind the mantras.
Okay. All right.
Mm.
How long did it take you to learn to play one?
Oh, no problem. I used to play piano when I was a kid, so
That helps.
Oh.
a little mini organ that
Hmm.
takes no effort at all to play. After
Hmm.
you piano, piano is much harder than harmonium.
Mm.
For
Now, do you
sure.
happen to have a YouTube channel or a platform that there are videos of you playing the harmonium that, guests or visitors can listen to?
Yeah, we'll type that in the chat
Hmm.
Okay.
afterwards.
Yeah, I was
The
gonna.
links. I have a YouTube channel and I also have a Patreon channel.
Okay.
Patreon channel has the mantras, but it also has recordings of full-length gatherings, which is super helpful for people who really want to get a more of an immersion into the energy that I'm sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, let's I guess go back a little bit. How did you find yourself on this journey that not many people take?
Sure. So in 2008, I traveled to New York City to see a great yogi, a Himalayan yogi. His name is Swami Purna.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it was a retreat at a place called East West Bookstore. And it was maybe 3 or 4 day retreat. And I was sitting in the bookstore with about 60 other people waiting for him. And as he was about to come into the room, I was overwhelmed by this presence and spiritual power. And I just had tears streaming down my face. And I hadn't even met him or seen him yet. And then he sat up in front of the room, dressed in like a dhoti. And if you know what a dhoti is, they wear that in India, this cloth. And he spoke, and I just was stunned. I had never met a being that had that kind of transmission where it moved my soul. And I knew that that would be my spiritual teacher. And I had met many great sages and saints and yogis, masters, spiritual masters before, and had sat in their presence. But this was something entirely different.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, after that retreat, ended up kind of following his practices, which include breath practices and mantras and asana practice, yoga,
Mhm.
Mhm.
meditations. And after 4 years of like really taking his teachings to heart, I came to another retreat in 2012 in Miami Beach, Florida. And he invited me in to his quarters kind of spontaneously. I had no idea he was going to bring me in. And we had a 3 minute conversation. And in that conversation, he asked me to renounce everything that I had built up so far. At that time, I was running a financial planning business, successful, very easy life. And he wanted me to leave everything behind and get a vehicle, put a bed in the vehicle, and set off and start sharing spiritual teachings, or what he calls satsang. Satsang is a word, Sanskrit word that means association with higher truth.
Mm.
And so
Mhm.
I literally went home and divested myself of everything, sold my business, sold my car, had a little garage sale, gave away all my business clothes, pretty much all my,
Wow.
and then bought a van, put a bed in the van, and set off on the road and just started traveling from place to place to place, sharing these spiritual gatherings.
Now, did you have family members and friends just think you are absolutely going crazy?
Well, um,
Or were they actually really supportive?
I can tell you, um, I didn't mention it to a lot of people.
Mm.
Probably wise.
I kind of kept it to myself mostly. So most people who I've known in the past don't even really know what my current life is like as a kind of renunciate, if you want to call that. You mentioned the word
Mhm.
sadhu. Sadhu is a spiritual term for one who does spiritual practice to reach God.
Hmm.
And there, a sadhu is a renunciate, usually wears the orange color and usually wanders around India with pretty much nothing and shares spiritual teachings to communities. And so I would be considered as like an American sadhu.
Okay.
And so when I mentioned this to my parents, one of the first comments that my mother made was, well, how are you going to support yourself?
That's a legitimate question coming from mom.
I said, well, the universe will support me.
Mm,
And
right.
she I think she was kind of skeptical about that
Sure.
and wasn't sure. But I trusted it. And then my father really didn't speak to me for, I don't know, something like a year regarding the topic at all. It was almost like a sort of taboo question in a way, because he didn't like the idea of following a guru.
Mm,
And it's an interesting stigma that this society
Mhm.
has
hmm
around gurus. Many people think that gurus take advantage of people
hmm
Mhm.
and start cults. Uh,
Right.
and that just depends on the guru you meet.
Right. Right.
Sure.
I mean, Jesus Christ was a guru.
hmm
You know, Sri Krishna was a guru.
hmm
Sri Ram was a guru. Buddha was a guru, right? And millions of people follow these great beings. They were great gurus, right? So depending on what guru you find, some are absolutely sort of divinized, and some are still have human things to work out. And this teacher, Swami Purna, who I follow, I'll even show you a picture of him.
Okay.
This, I brought it.
Oh,
Can you see it?
yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes. So do you still communicate with him now?
Once a month, I'll speak to him for just a few minutes.
Okay.
And he doesn't really give much guidance. I mean, it was only at the very beginning where he asked me to leave everything. And I was very happy to follow his guidance because I completely trust him with my life and everything.
Mhm.
It's a being that is so beyond in terms of his spiritual connection that, he's a great mystery. So to be guided by a great spiritual being to renounce and share spiritual teachings, to me, is a great honor.
Mm. Now, I find it interesting that you said you worked in finance and then now you flipped over to here. Like it's totally two different sides of the brain that's kind of working there. Did you have a sense of some spirituality before this occurred, or was this sort of like that awakening moment to you when you first met him?
I had been interested in spirituality before that for probably the last 18 years to some degree.
Mm.
But in 2006 is when I really got interested, where I met a spiritual teacher. You could call it my first spiritual teacher. His name was Brian, also funny enough. And
Nice synchronicity.
synchronicity, yeah. And he had a beautiful transmission, a beautiful energy, and that was the first time I really felt a spiritual connection in 2006. And from then on, started seriously looking for other spiritual teachers to help me to grow and increase my connection to spirit. And then, of course, meeting Swami Purna in 2008, that was enough. I didn't need to search any farther to find what I was looking for.
Mm.
That's quite a leap of faith.
Hmm. And I'm guessing that it did work out just like you thought that the universe provided.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about how I felt
Mhm.
at the beginning. It was hard. It was
Oh, I
hard.
can imagine. Gosh, yes, please.
Imagine like you have a van and you have a bed in the van. By the way, I called my van Persistence. I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and I tried to, as an example, I got this red Honda generator about this big, I don't know, like 2 feet long or something. I was really proud of this generator. I put it inside Persistence. I said, "Oh, I can plug in little appliances into this."
Mhm.
So excited to make my van like a little bit comfortable, right? And so here I am driving out of Austin, leaving everything behind, and Persistence broke down 11 times before I got out of Austin County.
Mm.
So I thought, oh man, this is already kind of difficult.
Yes.
And then I started traveling across the 40 freeway. I don't know if you guys know where the 40 freeway is, but between New Mexico and California, and through this sort of more of a I don't know if you call it desert hilly place. And as I just remember driving at the very beginning of my trip, and Persistence was running out of gas, and I saw the red light go on, or going underneath the red. And I said, I need to find a gas station. And the nearest gas station, according to my map, was something like 30 miles away. So I drove, and then as I got close to the exit, the car ran out of gas completely, and I just was gliding on the freeway, and then got to the exit, glided down, and then persistent stopped right at the stop sign at the exit, and ran it completely out of gas. And then I said, "Oh, where's the gas station?" I turned to the right, and there was a gas station. I walked over and came to the first guy who I met who was getting gas, and I said to him, "Would you be able to help me? My car ran out of gas. Could we push my van to the gas station?" So his name was Charlie, and so Charlie helped me to push persistence. I pushed the van, and Charlie got in and steered. And so we were pushing her to the gas station. I filled up the van with gas, and then I thanked Charlie, and then he went back into the gas station. It was kind of like a truck stop where a lot of truckers. And as I was trying to drive away, I heard something kind of rattling, and it turned out that the wheel was starting to fall off, and something was wrong with the wheel. And so I stopped again, and I went into the gas station, and I started to look for Charlie. And I got in line where he was getting in line, and then I offered to pay for his phone card to get minutes on his phone. And then I said to him, "Charlie, I have another problem. My wheel is falling off, and I don't know how to fix it." So he said, "Let's go to my house. I'll help you to fix it tomorrow morning, and you can stay on my property and sleep there."
Wow.
I'm only about 6 miles up the road. So so then I said, "Okay." He said, "But first, I want to watch a movie in the little truck station movie theater." And so I said, "Oh, okay." So here we go into this little movie theater in a truck station, and I'm watching this action movie next to him amongst all the truckers, and we're all together and watching. And I don't watch many action movies, but I made an exception with Charlie. After the movie, he kind of tightened my wheel a little bit enough so I could make it. And we drove on the freeway. We exited and took this sort of like probably 4 mile road up into the high mountains along the freeway. And there was like a full moon. And I was driving on the edge of a cliff, and all this dust coming. I couldn't see. It was at night. And finally, we got to his property, and it was completely black there because he had no electricity. He just had a couple of dead generators on his property. And I said to Charlie, "I'll just sleep in my van tonight, and the next morning maybe you could fix it, and then we could have breakfast together." So the next morning, I went and sat with him and his boarder, a guy who he was boarding along with the dog. We all sat and had breakfast together, and he made pancakes specially for us, and he brought out this huge container of, I can't believe it's not butter, that was completely melted into like soup. And then here I was with like these big pancakes, pouring this butter. I'm not even sure what it is, actually.
I don't think it's butter.
I think it's butter. I'm not sure. And then we all sat down along with the boarder and the dog, and we were eating breakfast together, and it was really sweet. And then, we sat down, and I looked over and I saw a little VCR and a TV, and I said, "Oh, I noticed you have a VCR and a TV. Do you ever use those things?" And he says, "No, we haven't been able to use electricity in a long time. Our generators died, and I haven't been able to fix them." And I said, "Well, let me see about that, Charlie." So then I went to my van, and I brought out my beautiful red generator.
Oh.
And he kind of puts a little bit of gasoline in it, and then revs it up, plugs in both of the appliances, turns on the TV, turns on the VCR, and puts in a movie. And me, and the boarder and the dog were watching together a movie. And the movie that he happened to turn on was a movie called Independence Day, and happened to be July 4th. So, and everyone was so happy because, you can imagine they hadn't watched on that TV in a long, long time.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
And then after about 30 minutes, I said to Charlie, "I think it's time for me to continue on with my journey." And he says, "Oh, do you have to go?"
Oh.
He said, "It's time for me to move on." And I said, "But first I wanted to give you something." He says, "What is it?" And I said, "I wanted to give you this beautiful red Honda generator because you need it more than I do." And he, "Were you sure?" I said, "Yes, absolutely. Please use it and enjoy." And so he was so delighted. And then he kind of guided me back down the road, and then I head out on the freeway and then headed on my way. And that was kind of one of the first adventures I had as a wandering sadhu.
Wow, that was an initiation. And probably not for the faint of heart. I don't know if I would have continued on after that. But I love the fact that there was this, even though it was material things that you were exchanging, there was also an exchange of positivity and energy, love. There's a lot here. It's just a beautiful story, and I'm sure one that he'll always remember too.
Mm. I went to a spiritualist church in Canada, and they had me be the Sunday speaker, and I even think maybe even a gathering afterwards. And during the Sunday service, at the end of that service, usually an hour long, the end of the service, the minister would give a reading, a psychic reading to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
They would kind of see what messages were for you. And she would go from each person to person. And then, so she went through the whole congregation and then came to me last and said, Brian, do you want a reading? And I said, sure, why not? Why not? So she says, Brian, I see you driving away from here in your van, just leaving a trail of beautiful flowers in your wake.
Mm. And how did that make you feel?
Well, it's really what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
planting
Yeah.
seeds and hoping that they grow.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Even
So
if a
you,
person, even if a person can't feel spiritual energy, maybe they haven't gotten to that point where they're ready to or ripe enough to feel spiritual presence. The seeds are planted in them
Mm-hmm.
so that
yes.
at some point they will bloom into a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
flower and the person will start to feel something profound. And they'll say, oh my gosh, spiritual power, spiritual energy, spiritual presence is real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, why not go, across the world and try pursue like the traditional monk journey over there? Why stay here? Why, like, what was the calling that was so strong in you to share the message here in America?
Well, the first answer is Swami Purna, my teacher, specifically told me United States and Canada.
Mm,
And now I've expanded to Mexico. So I follow his kind of guidance. And I also, at this point, he's really not giving me much guidance in the sense of like, do this or do that. It's more like helping me to continue to connect to higher states of consciousness and helping me to connect with my intuition. So then when the guidance comes, go to Europe or go to Japan or go to Australia or go to New Zealand or go to Europe, whatever, that I will go when
Mm-hmm.
the time is right. And also, um, I feel like the right person will come along and say, oh, I live in London and
mm-hmm.
I'd really love you to come. I'll pay for your flight and you can hold gatherings around England and then make that trip possible. So I'm kind of open to the universe guiding me in that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're very mindful and aware and in the present to understand when those messages do come through that you hear them.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when I do my talks, let's say Sunday talks, many ministers at churches will plan their talks, write outlines or write notes or even write out the whole speech, the whole sermon or whatever you want to call it. And I never do. I don't think I have ever once done that. I always go with whatever's coming through and speak that. And so I'm just as excited and delighted to hear what's going to be said as anyone else, because it is so spontaneous. And that's why these talks are so fun for me
Mm-hmm.
because it's fun, because it's not planned, it's not
Right.
structured, and it's also the message usually is for the specific people that are attending.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And I think people too can sometimes disconnect when they can feel that scripted, moment. So I think when it just feels authentic,
Mm-hmm.
people can, yeah,
Relate.
just relate and really
Yeah.
feel that more.
Mm-hmm.
I often say at the beginning of a talk, that the most important aspect of the talk is not the words or the information. And I'm not here to try to convert anyone to anything or make them believe in Brian's path.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm more interested in sharing an energy or a transmission that people can feel underneath the words. And that's where the real spiritual message is. When a person tunes into that presence, it takes them deeper into their spiritual connection, and then they naturally become a person full of goodness, kindness, love, sweetness, generosity, care, calmness, peace. All of that arises out of a spiritual connection without anyone even telling you to be nice or kind or sweet.
Beautiful.
That's interesting.
It's an activation of spiritual principles within your being. That's what happens in the talks and gatherings that I hold. And there are so many virtues. I would call them divine virtues. Divine just means endless, infinite, right? So if you're talking about divine peace, I'm then that says I am peaceful in all circumstances, no matter how difficult, whether if my house burns down or my best friend betrays me. I am in complete peace. So it's unstoppable peace. So if a person can tune in to a spiritual frequency of peace and absorb that in their system, in their body, in their mind, in their emotions, in their intellect, to their very soul, they begin to become peace itself. And then uh, they are that which they are searching for. So the goal is, if I share with you a peace mantra or a power word, if you chant it and connect enough to it, you will become the mantra itself.
Now, how long in your studies did it take for you to like arrive to that experience?
I am really still trying.
Not an easy task.
That's honest.
Mhm.
I mean, I can say that back in 2006 was the first time I really felt something, a real profound shift in my being, where spirituality became the most exciting thing of my life. That was the first time that really I couldn't believe what was happening inside me, the inner transformation that was happening, the shifting in consciousness, you could say. And then year by year, bit by bit, Brian becomes transformed through his spiritual practice, or in India they call it sadhana. Sadhana means spiritual practice, means chanting mantras, practicing visualization meditations, pranayam, breath practice,
Mhm.
attending satsang, these spiritual gatherings. This is sadhana. Each day that I continue these practices, in a way, Brian gets whittled away. Brian's ego, Brian's opinions and habits and patterns and all of Brian's belief systems and issues and darkness, all of that purifies bit by bit, day by day. And then he becomes more and more clear. And then the spiritual energy becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I notice, something fascinating, is as that's happening, it's even being recognized in the gatherings that I'm holding. They've become more powerful because of the purification work that I've done, which I'm so, so happy about.
Mhm.
So, what would be like an example of that you could say that you noticed from one session or experience to then the other when you've shifted?
Yeah, well, hard to say one session to another because every single session, there's a deep shift going on within me, something amazing that is very hard to describe. I would say maybe deeper meditations doesn't even do it justice. Imagine like sparkling, joyous meditations, blissful, amazing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I would say the biggest change for me as I'm doing more and more of these gatherings over the past 14 years, we'll say about 8 years into it, talk about 8 years, I felt pretty much my depression go away.
Mm.
Whereas I used to have a low-grade depression all the time.
Mhm.
And especially I would notice it when I would enter into a new town and I wouldn't know anyone. And so I would kind of feel
Mhm.
sad, kind of lonely, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't experience that anymore.
That's beautiful because there's so many people out there that can probably relate to that. And I know even in my past, I had some experiences too, where it was just sort of this underlying disconnection that I just, even if I felt really happy and life was really gentle and kind and I was joyful in that sense, there still, there still was that felt under there. So, um, I'm glad that you shared that as the audience can kind of get an idea of what some of this work that you share can really like help in their own lives. And you're going to share a couple practices and a little bit of what they can kind of start with. So I'm glad that you really shared that because I think that's more common than what people think.
And going through this metamorphosis, I mean, that's kind of what it's like. And your identity is shifting now.
Mm-hmm.
So slowly, the Brian that you were born as now starting to is starting a shift and this enlightenment and your expansion, your awareness, your consciousness, all of this is expanding. Did you notice some physical changes? I mean, other than maybe your emotions were a little bit more at peace, but did you notice like things around you, your reality, anything physical, maybe the people around you shifted to while you were going through this?
Well, I'll describe a couple of physical things and then I'll describe a more internal thing. That'd be good to kind of balance that out. First thing is pretty much right at the beginning. I remember in 2007 going to a spiritual retreat and I did this really deep breath practice, probably an hour long at that retreat. Deep, heavy breathing. Not easy to do.
No, an hour. That's a long time.
I think it would be something like 15 minutes and then a little break and then another 15 minutes of break, 15 minutes of break and 15 minutes. So over the course of that hour, about 45 minutes in, I was kind of on the floor, kind of opening my eyes and suddenly everything shifted. I it felt like a flame of meditation had turned on and was pushing my consciousness upward into this higher realm,
Mhm.
and my eyes changed. So vision, looking at objects, it would be like not being able to see so clearly the edges of objects. Objects seem to be blending together, so everything is kind of like an expanded peripheral view or something, where objects are more like melding together rather than feeling so much as separate objects.
Mhm.
So my vision changed. Very hard to explain, but it's probably happened to a lot of people who have really had a deeper experience. That was a physical change. Um, and then an internal change. So I don't feel so much inside a body anymore, inside what this would be called as Brian. So Brian is speaking and sitting here and listening and thinking, but the real identity, the real being is living somewhere else, is not in here.
Mhm.
So even though people are addressing me, I'm somewhere else. So again, difficult to explain because most people genuinely feel themselves to be the physical body and the senses and the mind as their individual. But as a person connects spiritually, one starts to leave the sense of time and space and distance and location.
Mhm.
And that's more of a closer to a definition of what a spiritual being is. It's not located anywhere on earth or in the universe. It has no location. And so I have more and more of a feeling of that. And so that's definitely an internal change.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a big change as well. I can imagine from where you started to then having that experience.
Mm.
Now, have you encountered other people along the way, along your travels, 14 years in, that decided that this is what they want to do?
Couple people wanted to renounce everything and follow me. One girl, she left everything and she wanted to follow me. She brought her own car and she followed along like a caravan and came to the first stop and stayed the night at this because I don't have a home. So
Mhm.
I stay in different people's homes in different cities. And oftentimes there'll be someone in a congregation of a
Mhm.
church that will open up their home and house me, or someone who's part of a yoga studio who may
Mhm.
have a room in their home that they'll house me. So very sort of kind-hearted people who will open up their doors that allow me to stay there. And that's really wonderful. Well, the first place that we started, that lady stayed the night. And then the next day, she just couldn't take it and she went back home.
One day. Well, I guess it's better to know sooner rather than later this is not your calling.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as easy as one may think when you don't
Mhm.
have a home. And you're really relying on the good graces of people to assist you in your travels. You really have to kind of surrender. And I've stayed in truck stops, I've stayed in campgrounds, I've stayed um, in really kind of rugged places. So it may look kind of exciting, but when you really get into the life, uh, it, you have to be a certain kind of person
Yeah.
who enjoys traveling, who enjoys driving, and who enjoys interacting kind of closely with new people.
Mhm. Mhm. And be willing to give up all of your possessions. Mhm. That is
And
not an easy task for a human.
yeah, and like you said, create that trust so strong within them that no matter what's going to be thrown your way, you're continuing with, the goal and the journey and moving forward because naturally we're set up to want security. I mean, especially I would say women for sure, we're set up to, want to nest and create a family and build that kind of environment. Not every woman, I don't want to speak for every woman, but so yeah, I can imagine that it's challenging for many people to kind of follow that path, but it seems like you're just so passionate about it and the universe has really provided it when you needed it and is still
Mhm.
providing it here as you're speaking with us today. So that's beautiful to see.
Yeah, I was married for 10 years from 2000 to 2010. And I enjoyed marriage and I went through that experience. And I also had a relationship even after that as well for 4 or 5 years, something like that. And so I really experienced a lot of relationship challenges too, and learned so much about myself and how to work with relationships. And so now I can also kind of counsel people
Mhm.
in their relationships and help them to get through difficult times because I myself have gone through it, even though now I am a traveling monk.
Yeah.
Still had the experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's important to go through it, to try it all, to learn from every circumstance. And I'm glad I went through all that so that I could assist people in even some of their psychological issues and working out those things. And a lot of people who come to me for sessions are looking for some sort of counseling and more of a spiritual perspective regarding their relationship as well. So I've been able to assist people in that way.
Mm.
Mm, beautiful. So has there ever been a moment that perhaps was so challenging that you nearly gave up the journey? Or has it just been continuous since you decided this was your path?
When Swami Purna asked me to renounce everything and become a wandering sadhu, that was it. There was absolutely no question, no matter how difficult it was. Even if my car broke down and I was playing my harmonium on the corner of a street with a begging bowl, I would continue to share the spiritual energy with people. And by the way, in a way, I've done that. Um, so in Fort Collins, Colorado, I had a gathering at a yoga studio and I was going to stay there for about 5, 6 days or something. I didn't know anyone. This is back in 2013 or 14. And so I decided to sleep in my van on my bed there next to a park, and I would use the park bathroom to give myself like a little sponge bath. And that was kind of rugged. And then what I would do is take my harmonium, go to the middle of town, sit on a corner of town, play the harmonium as people would pass by with a little sign that says, "Come to this yoga studio for a song on Friday."
Mm.
And people would come by, and most people would just ignore me as I'm chanting my heart out,
Mhm.
singing mantras and songs, beautiful songs. Most of them, I would be surprised if someone actually came up to me and say, "Hey, how's it going? What are you doing? What are you up to? What is that instrument?"
Mhm.
Nothing, hardly any of that. And I did it for 3 days, sitting on the corner. Each day, maybe 3 hours, I would be singing. On the third day, on that Friday, when the gathering was about to happen, my voice was going hoarse.
Mm.
Said, "Oh, how am I going to sing during the gathering?" And so that evening, we held the gathering at this yoga studio, and me and two other people came. The guy who opened the door for me, who was an older guy, a real long time yogi, and then a girl who really didn't know much about yoga, and she was younger. So we sat down, and I started playing the harmonium and then sharing some spiritual teachings and yogic practices and things. And the guy happened to know way more than I did about yoga. And so anytime the girl would chime in and ask a question and I would try to answer, he would then kind of interrupt me and he would answer and expand upon her question and give her the answer. And after a while, I thought, well, he knows more about yoga and spirituality than I do. I might as well just let him take over. And so after the gathering, they gave me a little bit of donations, and then I took my harmonium and my box of books that I had, and my yoga mat and my cushion. I had was kind of burdened down with all this stuff. And that night in Fort Collins, they had a huge event of 10,000 people coming over the course of that weekend to this big musical event, and everyone was out there drinking beer and making merry and having fun. And I was walking alone through this sea of people who were having so much fun back to my van. And I went into my van, whose name, as you recall, is Persistence.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I drove back to the park, and I lay in my bed next to the park and I just cried.
Mhm.
Mm.
I cried. It was the loneliest moment of my entire journey because imagine two people come to your gathering. This is so precious to you. The energy is so
Yeah.
pristine, so sweet. And just this two people came, and then outside, thousands of people came to a worldly event. And I had these thoughts of like, who's interested in spirituality? Everyone is after worldly things. Who's interested in
Mhm.
finding their soul?
Mhm.
And so I had some disappointment around that. And that night, I said to myself, I'm never going to give up.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you didn't give up because then you wouldn't be a guest on our show today. That's an incredible, beautiful story. Loneliness is not easy. I've mentioned this before on some of our other shows that sometimes I think God asks us to go solo for a little bit without any external interference until we can maybe find our way and decide that this is, what we really want to do in life. And it's not easy because we do live in a very ego based planet. So the more people pay attention and are present, I think we'll see more, experience more, but I don't know if we're all quite ready for that yet. So I guess time will tell, but I'd say that we're taking a step in the right direction with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love to share so much. So I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate
Yeah.
your part of
Yeah.
And
that.
and there's so many now too that are just growing more and more curious
Mm.
about spirituality. Even if it takes them, in the religion aspect, I think just more people are searching for a greater connection to something bigger. And so I'm glad that you're here today because it gives people an insight um, into that individual journey of yours, but also the messages that you're sharing and you're wanting to get out there. And so that's where I kind of want to go to a little bit. I really am curious about what are some of the main messages that you tend to share at, some of your gatherings, or that you just really feel that maybe humanity can really benefit with at
Especially
this
going,
time?
yeah, and it's right, especially going through, there's a lot of negative energy right now, probably more than there has been. And I think the more light that is brought into the planet, the more people are starting to see that it may not be exactly what they thought. So what would you recommend? What would you offer people? Maybe like an exercise to help them be more present in the moment, and maybe transform a lot of that negative energy that it may be around them, or the work field. Something that would help them as they move forward.
There's one thing I would mention regarding that question, and that is many people worry, am I doing enough to you know, heal the world, And some people are frustrated that maybe they can't do enough to prevent a sort of disaster that might happen. And what can I do? And so much worry that goes, so much fear that goes into that. And, not everyone can become a politician and create laws and do speeches to thousands of people and make a huge difference in the world, right? So what do you do? And I feel like the greatest service one can do for a society in crisis is to work on themselves, to heal themselves, to connect to their own soul, to follow their spiritual path. That will be their greatest service, rather than worrying so much about, what's happening, turning on the news and spending so much time complaining about what's happening in society. So instead of spending time doing that, sit down and do a genuine spiritual meditation. And I can even share with you a really, really simple practice to do that can be a profound meditation on the heart chakra, the heart space. And why I focus on the heart space is because this world needs love. And, if politicians become loving, suddenly they're passing laws that are including everyone,
Mm-hmm.
supporting everyone, even immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
and all sexual orientation, all genders, all belief systems, all skin colors, everyone is supported by the laws that or whatever government, doesn't have to be US government, but politicians generally want to work on behalf of everyone. That's love,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's love. And when you activate this chakra, you automatically act through love. You automatically include everyone in your embrace. And so this is a sort of easy practice to do every single day. Really activate the energy of the heart chakra, the heart center. You place your right hand on your chest, and then you just breathe in deeply into your heart, and then say the words as you breathe out. Om Pran Pran. Pran means life force, so you're activating the life force again. You breathe out all the air, then inhale again. Om Pran Pran. Breathing out all the air. And then deep breath into the heart again. Om Pran Pran. Breathing out. Deep breath into the heart. Om Pran Pran. Breathing into the heart. Om Pran Pran. Deep breath in. Om Pran Pran. Breathing out all the air. And then we'll do 3 more times. Om Pran Pran. Om Pran Pran. Om Pran Pran. We relax the hand, the arm, relax. And try to feel the energy. Feel the meditation. And we'll just set the intention that anyone who listens to this meditation and follows it will be deeply connected with the spiritual energy that arises or that is invoked. Each time they do it, that it will become more powerful, deeper, more profound. And so it is.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I imagine that's pretty powerful when you first get up in the morning to activate that and connect there to the heart and how
I
that.
would, I would do it in the morning
Mm-hmm.
and in the evening before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Mm.
That way it sets also the tone for your sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Well, I hope the
Absolutely.
viewers will practice and maybe they can let us know in the comments, if they've, felt any difference in there, or did they notice that their heart chakra kind of expand, open up? Are they feeling the energy inside? I'll be very curious to see. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the word pran means life force. So you're activating the powerful life force in your heart, opening the heart chakra, clearing the heart chakra, the heart space, and also healing the physical heart as well,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and increasing your life force in general. So if a person did this every day, they would also increase their lifespan.
I think I'm going to get right to that.
Well, since I'm older than you, Laura, I think I'm going to get to that too.
So it's a priceless jewel that
Mhm.
I would share with people that if they value their spiritual growth, this would be um, a treasure. Yeah, you couldn't begin to understand the impact of what it would have for a person in their daily life.
Mhm.
Well, Steph, maybe we can make that commitment and come back on a few shows and mention how that's going for us.
Yeah, I
Be
would
a
love to do that.
good update to the listeners
Hmm.
to hear it from us as well.
And Brian, this has been a wonderful, I learned more than I expected, and I love to learn. Everyone knows that they've listened to our other shows. I just love to learn, and this was one of the most beautiful, heartfelt shows I think we've had so far.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Now we have just a little bit time left. So was there another exercise that you wanted to share with the listeners
Um, so a lot of people, I would say,
or message as well? You can share a message.
I would say many people do not work on their foot chakra.
Foot chakras.
Yeah, they don't work on the feet, which is where a lot of times our sort of deepest, darkest places are located. Stuff that even many
Mm,
yogis have not been able to even reach, because they don't
mm,
get to like bypass to go into higher states of consciousness and forget to work on the feet chakra and, our sort of deeper issues like rage and guilt and despair are located in the feet chakra. So you can actually, to clear the feet chakra, you can place your feet together, touch the feet together, and chant to your feet the words Om Padam Padam, Padam. Padam just means feet in Sanskrit.
Okay.
And so we'll just do that 11 times, chanting for our feet, touching our feet together. And people who are listening to this can also do it at the same time. So let's try it together, starting now. Om Padam Padam. 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 And then just relax. And for a moment, try to feel the energy of the feet chakra. Hare Om Tat Sat. Hare Om Tat Sat. Hare Om Tat Sat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yes, I feel so relaxed.
I know. I agree. Even just in the everyday life, I think people don't realize how much our feet are kind of this window to our physical health. And now, as you're saying, our energetic health and well-being. And so I think that was just so valuable. And I appreciate you sharing that with
Yes,
us.
thank you.
Great. Yeah.
It's been
Yeah,
beautiful.
as I said, my most valuable sharing are the energetic practices, and my hope is that people will at least try them. And if they get a chance to listen to it over the recording, that maybe it'll trigger something, and um, uh, they can heal in really profound ways. And then maybe even if they get a chance, listen to some of the gatherings that I have recorded online. Most of my full-length gatherings are on patreon.com,
Mm-hmm.
patreon.com/Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a great place to kind of continue doing the practices. And usually gatherings are around an hour and a half or so each recording. And each one usually is a different subject. And one might be about love, another about peace, another about transcending, another about how to work with the ego and clear egoic tendencies, all kinds of different topics, but probably over 1,000 gatherings recorded on Patreon that people can listen to.
Okay, we'll have those links
Beautiful.
included in the comments, for anyone that wants to reach out. Now, real quick, if someone wanted to host you, would they go? Do you have a website, or is there a specific link that we can send people to if they would be interested in having you come to their area and have you host?
Yeah, just go to my website, stirtheheart.com, and go to the contact page and just type in your name and your email. Send me a note saying I live in such and such town and I'd love to have you do something. Maybe we could talk about it. And then that would be great. I'm willing to really go anywhere. I travel all around the United States and I love to go to new places.
Okay, great.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Well, hopefully you'll be coming back to our area because we know that a friend of ours and Kim, who is our one of our first guests here on the podcast, as we talked about when we first spoke to you, just had a really amazing, beautiful experience at that event. So I hope to see you back around the area and to be a part of one of those sessions myself.
Mhm.
I hope so
Yeah.
too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Oh, our
absolutely. The
pleasure.
time
Thank you
went
so
by
much.
so fast.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully we can have you back on here and talk some more to what maybe we didn't get to or tell more about the travels that you've been having as time goes by.
Yes, yes. It's nice to talk to both of you.
Yes, thank you so much, Brian.
Beautiful.
It was wonderful. I feel amazing, by the way. I don't know about Laura, but I feel very relaxed,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
very calm,
Relaxed,
very relaxed.
joyful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep,
Good.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Many blessings.
All right,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Namaste to you as well.
Namaste.
And everyone listening, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Sleeping Lotus podcast. We have episodes weekly, and you can watch them currently on YouTube and soon to be streaming on other streaming platforms. So please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.